Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this IT governance webinar on complying with the SEC cyber security rules. I'm Alan Calder. I'm the Chief Executive and founder of IT Governance. I've been in this business now for some 20 odd years. I've written a bunch of books on things like ISO 27001, on regulatory compliance, on GDPR in the EU and the UK, Open University textbook on cyber security, done a lot of consulting with companies, but of course have spent a lot of time working on the development and growth of IT governance. We now have pushing 200 employees across the world. We focus on governance, risk management and compliance broadly, but very specifically ISO 27001, the international standard for best practice and for cybersecurity. We've got about 12,000 clients one way or another. And on the left, you see a kind of image, a graphic of the range of standards and frameworks in which we have expertise, and we deliver to our clients typically around a platform which makes life as easy as it possibly can, a combination of learning and standards, of staff awareness and competence training, and then professional services. So through IT governance, you can access whatever the complete suite of products and services you need for complying with one or more of the segments on that ecosystem of products and services. We've done some 1,300 cybersecurity projects, some 1,600 cybersecurity projects, 1,300 of those around ISO 27001. We've done some 7,000 Cyber Essential certifications, 1,100 organizations use GRC software. So what you get with IT governance is a lot of experience working across a lot of customers, working out how to tackle regulatory and compliance challenges in a way that's cost effective for organizations and which enables you to basically get on with doing what you want to be doing, which is serving your customers while depending on our expertise to deliver your peace of mind. This webinar is going to cover the key compliance requirements of the SEC rules, a bit of background to them, the compliance deadlines, looking at then how ISO 27001 can actually help you do what the SEC rules require you to demonstrate you have done without them providing any guidance on what to do. The CyberComply platform, how that can enable you to leverage technology to do that efficiently and cost effectively, and then Q&A. And the planned webinar will be about 35 or 40 minutes worth of me talking through these topics. You may well find that you have questions that you're going to want to have answered. Please do in the GoToWebinar panel, which you should have on your screen. You will see a section there called questions. If you open that, you can type questions into that, literally type questions in there as they occur to you. When we come to the Q&A section of the webinar, which as I said is about 35 or 40 minutes in, I will pick up each of the questions. I'll share the question with the audience and I will answer the question to the best of my ability. So, and then first question, which I expect will be asked is, are the slides going to be made available afterwards? The answer to that is yes. Slides will go out to everybody who registered on this webinar over the course of the next couple of days, but getting the slides, while that's useful, is not nearly as exciting as being on the webinar itself. So let me move into that. As I said, do bear in mind, if you have questions, stick them in the live question section, and we will have a live Q&A section later on. So, SEC regs, lots of years in development, hit the headlines really through the back end of 2023. What's the background? And the background is exactly the kinds of cyber risks which we've captured in these three descriptions of cyber breaches. Big breaches, real estate wealth network, 1.5 billion personal records related to property ownership left unprotected. That means cyber criminals not only know about you, but they know where you are, they know where you might have been, they know that you're probably not there at the moment. But it's also wealth network, so they know you're not poor. Not a good place to be for the real estate network. 23andMe, huge amounts of genetic and research data breached in October 2023. Credential stuffing attack, that's kind of taking advantage of inadequate individual credentials and process inadequacies, 1 million data packs with Jewish genetic profiles initially leaked, additional leaks of other genetic profiles, really not cool. Capital Health data and other cybercriminals go for health companies, particularly in November last year. Health provider in New Jersey targeted, allegedly more than 10 million files exfiltrated, and a number of facilities impacted. So the simple, and you can find these things all over the news, all over social media. Every single day there's a new one, and the core message is that the tech stack, the technology solutions that organizations deploy to deal with cyber breaches are simply no longer enough. They do not solve today's cyber risks. If they did, we wouldn't have the breaches. If saying to the CISO, yeah, here's another $500,000, $5 million, go fix it, if that worked, then cyber breaches wouldn't occur. But they go on occurring, and they will go on occurring for so long as organizations think it's just about the tech stack. It's not. So you've got to focus on why the new rules, a bit more about the new rules. The security horizon getting more and more crowded, more and more different types of exploit out there, and those are getting to be really exciting because of the use of artificial intelligence, the use of deep fakes. Those kind of shift the security challenge massively. It's like suddenly going from having somebody throwing stones at you to having incoming ICBMs. So threat horizon has got to be very crowded, and the attack surface has got wider. So more and more people working from home, working remotely, working while they're traveling, more and more different devices, everything accessible through the cloud. People like to think the cloud is secure. It isn't. Nothing is secure. And the more you have in the way of devices and different networks you log on to and different apps, so the ways in which cyber criminals can break into your network, steal your stuff, gets to be easier and easier, because the speed of expansion is much faster than most organizations can deal with in terms of expanding their security practices. And the core issue is human beings. It's not the technology, it's the human being. It's the reality that Dave is going to click on a link, he's going to open an email, he's going to scan a Q code, and bingo, you're done. Because what cyber criminals know is that human beings are going to click on links, they're interested in stuff, they're curious, they take umbrage, they get involved in things. All of those are ways in which you can take advantage of somebody. Click on a link, in comes malware, take advantage of a weakness in a set of processes that are not properly documented, so somebody doesn't think about how we handle changing passwords, or doesn't have the software configured properly. The inadequacies in people and process are the two biggest focus areas for cyber criminals. Of course, organizations spend money on technology, not on people and process, and that's why you have breaches. So if you're going to solve the problem, you've got to think about people, process, and technology. You can't do this without technology. You need anti-malware, you need all of that stuff, but you've got to deal with professional services. You're going to have to draw professional service support in. You've got to get training for people, because you've got to make sure that people and process are appropriately organized. You've got a proper governance, risk management, and compliance solution which recognizes the vulnerabilities, that crafts mitigating controls around all of those areas and deals with them in a way that enables you as an organization to be genuinely secure. And that's about building cyber defense in depth. It's about recognizing that you are going to be breached, that an individual is going to click on something. You can't stop that. So you've got to recognize that for so long as the internet and the digital environment is the one within which we work, people are going to make errors. And so what happens next? And how quickly can you deal with that attack? How do you organize your network? How do you organize your incident response behavior? And that kind of depends on management having a view as to how to handle cybersecurity. And of course, that is exactly what the SEC and regulators around the world have recognized, that managements have to take ownership of governance, risk management, and compliance, because you have to think beyond the tech stack. You have to focus on cyber solutions that address people, process, and technology that are properly implemented, that are led by management. So that's the background. So what does that really mean? What do the SEC rules require of organizations? Well, and these next slides are a little bit legalistic, but let me nevertheless just run through them because this is what it requires. The new rules are cybersecurity risk management strategy, governance, and incident disclosure. They don't tell you about spending more money on tech. They are focused on how you manage risk, what your strategy is, what your governance framework looks like, and how you manage and disclose incidents. Gives you some standardized requirements, standardized disclosure requirements for public companies, investors, and market participants, which require an annual disclosure of your cybersecurity risk management strategy. Not interested in how much you spend on technology, risk management strategy and governance, and material cybersecurity incidents that have occurred. In reality, you should have disclosed material cybersecurity incidents when they appeared. Those are the two main areas that you need to be focused on. They should be disclosed through the XBRL process. Applies to domestic registrants and to foreign private issuers, all of those subject to the SEC 1934 Act, as well as to business development companies as defined. So again, you will know how you fall in, but pretty well for every domestic registrant and foreign private issuer, it affects you. There isn't you're a very small organization, keep out, these rules apply to you. So specifically, regulation SK now has item 106 added to it. Registrants must disclose specific information about cybersecurity, risk management, strategy, and governance in your annual 10K report. Form 20F requires foreign private issuers to disclose particular issues about their cybersecurity risk management strategy and governance in their 20F reports. Both items require registrants to describe processes for assessing, identifying, and managing material risks from cybersecurity threats. That's typically called a risk assessment process. And what do you do with the conclusions from your risk assessment? You also have to define whether any threats that are likely to arise may affect you. So you've got to have some method of looking ahead at what are the ICBMs coming in on your threat horizon, and you need to describe the board's supervision of risks from cybersecurity threats, as well as management's role in assessing and managing risks. That's quite hairy, because if you think about the consequences of getting that wrong, if you make a statement about how the board and management are doing it and they're not actually doing it, you then potentially find yourself facing litigation for misleading the market, for misleading investors, for breach of fiduciary duty. All of that range of options become issues that can bring actions against the company and against its management. So 106B, disclose how the firm assesses, identifies, and manages material risks. 1. 2, how risk management has been integrated into your overall risk management strategy. So you've got an enterprise or corporate risk management strategy. You probably have, or you should have, cyber risk as one of the risks on that. The detail of how you manage that one risk is what this webinar is about, because there's a lot more to it than, hey, we have a cybersecurity risk. Disclose any engagements with assessors, consultants, auditors, or other third parties. Disclose processes to oversee cybersecurity associated with your service providers, because of course there are a number of major incidents which have been because of inadequate third-party security, and any risk resulting from previous incidents that you haven't particularly dealt with. Nice, straightforward requirements. Oversight, is there a board committee or subcommittee that's been set up to deal with cybersecurity? Which management positions or committees are responsible for assessing risk? And do they know what they're doing? What's their expertise? How are incidents monitored and mitigated? And there's some specific requirements about how that's done. How are information security incidents reported to the board? And how do you, having gathered information about nature, scope, timing, and impact, how do you disclose that to the SEC? Because all of that has to be dealt with. Some specifics. Registrants must describe processes, if any, for the assessment, identification, and management, how they're integrated into the overall risk management. Are there assessors or other third parties involved? Are you monitoring the risk from third parties? Very specific addition to item 106. Item 106C, board's oversight. So very specific requirements. I'm not going to spend much more time on that because they're all there. Incident response, disclose any cybersecurity incident response that you experience that's deemed to be material and describe the material aspects. Deemed to be. So there is an option for you to make a decision about what is material. You've got, where it is material, to file a Form 8K within 4 business days of determining that it was material, and don't spend a month determining that it's material, because that's just kind of obviously kicking the can down the road. If the US Attorney General says, yeah, you can, this is pretty serious, we're going to get involved in this, then you can delay filing, but that requires you to talk to the Attorney General. And if it's a major incident that looks though it could have major cyber crime ramifications, might have a nation state involved, you should be talking to the Attorney General very, very early on. So it makes sense to determine in advance, as part of your risk planning, what material might look like, so that you can efficiently go, this meets the criteria for being a material breach. We will go about reporting it, because the moment you report it, it's public. And the moment it's public, of course, people can start shorting your stock, they can bring actions against you. So you need to have the whole process. Not only is this material, but this is what we're doing about it. How are we going to handle communications? How are we going to handle reporting to shareholders, to stockholders? How are we going to handle reporting to other stakeholders? All of that you should really work out in advance. That's part of sensible planning for incidents. Remember, cyber incidents are going to happen to you. There is no organization I have yet come across that is able to say and prove we have never had a cyber incident. Every organization I've ever spoken to has a cyber incident of some sort every single month. And typically it's between 2 and 5. A lot of those are quite small there. Somebody sent out 20 emails using the carbon copy, and they were confidential email addresses. That's a breach of privacy regulations. 2 major cybersecurity breaches that can't be contained. That happens all the time. Effective incident response is therefore a fundamental part of it, and knowing what level is something which is so material that we have to deal with it is a really key part of your planning. So all the same things apply to foreign issuers, just different documents that have to be completed. So let's not spend a lot of time talking about the documents, but I do want to just talk about the business of incident management. Some organizations will try and handle incidents on the basis that they don't happen very often, and that with somebody just writing down what you're doing, that will work. Smart organizations recognize that the only way to handle incidents is by having a piece of software that's designed to manage incidents. And a sensible piece of software would have an API that enables it to talk to your help desk, to your service desk. So you have everybody reporting everything into your help desk. If it's an incident, it automatically gets flagged through into the incident manager, and the incident manager then captures all of the information that you will need. It tracks how you deal with it. It can give you clues. It can give your response team clues. Say, right at this point, you need to do this. You need to flag it up to so-and-so. It will track the asset. It will track the solutions. It will track all of that in an automated format. And that means that reporting, demonstrating that you followed rules around reporting, and in case you weren't aware, well, the SEC has rules, so does, if you're in the EU, GDPR, so do a number of different laws. They have their own specific version of what information you have to capture, how you have to demonstrate that you dealt with the incident correctly, and you need to be able to prove that later on. You can't do that on a spreadsheet or trying to do it on the fly. You need to plan for it and make sure you're dealing with it. And if you do that, of course, you get the added benefit that you can learn from it. You can go back and say, through this incident, I can see what actually happened. And remember, dealing with incidents, you suddenly, if you have a typical 2 to 4 person security compliance team, a major incidents, they're overwhelmed in the first couple of hours. They're overwhelmed with people saying, I can't get this, what do I do about this, how do I handle that? They're trying to work out what to do next because you haven't planned it. They just can't handle, they won't have the bandwidth to handle it. So pre-planning how you're going to deal with an incident, having people trained, having a piece of software that helps you manage it, is a huge contribution to the business actually surviving the cyber incident itself. CyberComply, I'll talk a bit more about CyberComply, has exactly that kind of a module in it, which you can deploy on a standalone basis, or you can deploy much more sensibly as part of a platform that enables you to manage cybersecurity across the whole of the organization. But certainly a platform tied into your service desk, your IT help desk, is a critical part of managing what is as common as death and taxes today, which is cyber incidents. So just talking briefly about compliance deadlines. The compliance deadlines are driven, they're important, but the how to comply is pretty fundamental. The SEC regs say this is what you have to demonstrate. It doesn't tell you how to demonstrate it. So how do you comply? How do you comply with the regulations? You have to disclose processes, means that you have to have some. Disclosing them means that you have to have something to disclose, which means you need to write your processes down, they need to be communicated, they need to be enforced, and you need to have evidence that they've been enforced. And there's three ways you can do that. You can create your own processes. You will have a number of processes anyway. There's quite a lot of hard work in that. There's room for error. They cost time and money as you create your processes, and you're working it out from first principles. Or you can hire consultants. They've got lots and lots of expertise. They'll bring their own solutions. Quite often, their own solutions aren't necessarily what you want, but it's an expensive, time-consuming option. May or may not be fit for purpose, but it's a good way to go. But there is a huge shortage of competent consultants. Globally, there's a 2.7 million person gap in the workforce, so kind of difficult to get consultants who can come and do what you need to do. And the third option is to deploy existing best practice. Best practice tested over many years, proven to help organizations meet regulatory requirements like the SEC regs, deal with incidents, and that's a faster, less expensive route. It also brings the commercial benefits of making meeting RFP requirements, client requirements, stakeholder requirements a lot simpler and a lot more straightforward. And the best practice around cybersecurity is an international standard called ISO IEC 27001. The most recent iteration of that is 2022. It's globally recognized. It's the same standard in every single country of the world. You can be audited against it. It's a third-party audit in the United States by an ANAB accredited certification body, so it's independently, solidly audited. It's got 25 years worth of best practice development, drawing on experience around the world, and it contains best practice processes for how the C-suite should manage cyber risk, how to do a cyber risk assessment, how to select and deploy mitigating cyber controls, best practice around what board and management competence might look like, best practice around cyber incident response, and around privacy and legal compliance. So it's a perfectly logical starting point. You can buy a copy of ISO 27001 for a couple of $100s. It's a standard, it's a public document. It's published by by a joint ISO and IEC subcommittee. And as I said, it's got 25 years worth of development behind it. So how do you go about deploying ISO 27001? You've got an SEC compliance regulation. You're going to have to demonstrate that you are complying. You're going to have to talk about how you do that. So how do you get on with it? Well, the reality is that most organizations are already doing some of what ISO would set out. You will have some processes in place. So typically, the first step in an ISO project is a gap analysis. A gap analysis will identify against what the requirement in ISO 27001 is a requirement standard. It will identify what you've got in place, what the deficiencies are, where the shortfalls are, and therefore you can identify what steps you need to take to close the gaps. Typically, at an ISO 27001 gap analysis will also look at the specific requirements that apply to an organization in its sector. So certainly the SEC rules, maybe HIPAA, maybe GLBA, whatever the specific set of cyber and privacy regs are that apply to your sector form part of that gap analysis. So you can then get an implementation plan. This is the documentation you need. This is the rollout of the documentation. This is how you train the staff. These are the controls you put in place. This is how the software needs to be configured. And that implementation plan you roll out to close the gaps. once you've done, you have an external audit by a commercially selected external audit company, and they will then give you a certificate of compliance, assuming that you comply. Typically, certification lasts for 3 years with interim audits during that period, and that ISO 27001 certificate means you can say to anybody, we take cybersecurity seriously, we have an external audit that demonstrates we take it securely, so we take it seriously, and we're audited. So when something goes wrong, the chances of somebody saying to you, actually, you weren't doing this properly, you go, well, we were doing it properly, we have external evidence. It's a very solid defense of management doing its job properly around cybersecurity, because you followed the best practice standard, you're externally audited, you know that you can demonstrate that you are compliant inside it. So how do you go about implementing ISO 27001? There's something called a Fast Track 500. It's an approach pioneered by IT governance, which effectively is a fixed price approach to implementing ISO 27001. It's called a Fast Track 500 because it's basically designed for organizations with between 20 and 500 staff, effectively, roughly in scope, and IT governance does most of the work. It's a implementation based on a platform so that you could do it yourself. You could simply work it all out from the platform, but the platform has in it all of the documentation, all of the functionality that you need, and the project plan goes through exactly what I talked about, a gap analysis with a report and implementation plan. CyberComply enables the implementation to be fast, robust, consistent, saves you money, enables your IT and compliance team to genuinely leverage technology and automation to get a lot more done. Audits can be managed through the audit manager. So it really makes the whole thing straightforward, and the whole project then is delivered remotely. And what you come out of that with is something that enables you to demonstrate when you make your annual declaration that you have the appropriate processes, senior management is appropriately skilled, you dealing with incidents properly, and that all works because you've got an ongoing annual audit from a third party which says you're continuing to comply. Staff training is built into that, and the Fast Track 500 can be extended for larger organizations. It can be bespoke, but it's a very straightforward, almost cookie cutter approach for most organizations, professional services, tech and media, education, and it's, as I said, the one big advantage is also a fixed price approach. That means you can look sensibly at a timeline, which is about not just getting to be compliant, and the information we see suggests that potentially less than 50% of all organizations within scope are currently ready to demonstrate compliance. So set context, scope definition, get leadership commitment, plan the project, get the necessary support from around the business, do the risk assessment, deploy the controls, make sure they're working, evaluate performance, drive improvement. That's the kind of project cycle. As you go through that, you're getting towards the point that you can go, we have this working, we are on top of this, your annual declarations can be complete. And so the deadlines, which is where I started there, all registrants must provide disclosures, the Form 106, Form 10K, so that's incidents from December the 15th, Form 8K from December the 18th last year, disclosure using inline XBRL from December 2024 for 10K disclosures, and 8K disclosures using inline XBRL also from December next year. So practically speaking, your compliance should be in place now. Practically speaking, you should be able to demonstrate now that you are complying, both in terms of processes, competence, and dealing with incidents with the SEC requirements. You've got a year to be able to demonstrate that all using the XBRL disclosure mechanisms. So CyberComply, I've talked about a couple of times. CyberComply is a platform which captures the whole range. Your CyberComply license brings you access to everything. It's a pretty straightforward product so that you can do whatever you need to do today plus whatever you do tomorrow without it costing you any more. But it also enables you to access an integrated suite of governance, risk management, and compliance services that enable you to deal, if you need them, because if you don't need them, you don't, but enables you to deal with the whole range of issues that you might have in handling incidents, handling cybersecurity on a day-to-day basis. And IT governance, remember, in CyberComply is very governance, risk management, and compliance-based business. So it's an integrated compliance platform. It's built around industry best practices. It's cloud-based. It will help you identify and treat security risks before they become critical concerns, because CyberComply has a continually updated risk register. It will identify new threats. It will identify new vulnerabilities. So as they come up, you can simply pay attention to what's changing in CyberComply without needing to look outside and try and find that evidence yourself. It's in there. You can map data flows nationally and internationally. You can do the risk assessment quickly, efficiently, comprehensively, not on a spreadsheet, so it's robust. It's got step-by-step processes and automation to ensure compliance and demonstrate compliance. And it's got a dashboard that enables you and the board to see where you are, real-time evidence of compliance status with unlimited support. You can live chat if you need to at product dev, help you navigate. Very easy to get started, lots of tools in there to help start with, and of course, cybersecurity incidents really effectively managed. So CyberComply, and if you call us after this, we can arrange for a demo or talk you through the product and what it can do for you, really does effectively start automating this aspect of compliance with the SEC regs. It enables you not only to comply with them and demonstrate compliance, but to do so in the future as the rules change. And you can do that at the same time as making sure that whatever you're doing around your cybersecurity management also meets the requirements of other frameworks like NIST 800-171 or CIS 18 or PCI. All of those can be mapped. The tool is designed to do that, all part of the same package, all part of the same incident tracking, all part of the same talk to all stakeholders, keep all members of staff informed, all of that relatively straightforward and built into the tool. So I would encourage you, if you're looking at how you can leverage automation, have a look at how CyberComply can help you do that cost effectively. Obviously, IT governance has a bunch of practical solutions. There is training for directors, there is an SEC gap analysis, traditional consultancy services, SEC documentation, which is live on the CyberComply platform. So if you get a CyberComply license, it comes with all of the SEC documentation that you need. There is a guide to the regulations. There's a whole bunch of very traditional, comprehensive products and services that through IT governance you can access that can enable you to move along quickly with your SEC journey. Around incident response. And incident response is where organizations are going to get into trouble first. We see cyber criminals now who they attack the organization, release a chunk of ransomware. If you don't pay them quickly, they contact the SEC and say, you ought to know that this company here, we've placed a ransomware attack on. They haven't reported to you in time, so they're breaking the law as well. Cyber criminals are very happy to do that because they know it puts pressure on you. So amongst the services that you can access from us is Cyber Incident Foundation training, how to get your entire incident response team really trained on the pros and cons, the goods and bads in incident response. You can buy an incident response retainer. That means that our incident response and forensic teams are available on a 24/7 basis. You've got what the hell do we do now? Who do we talk to? Kind of call. You just call us, you're on a retainer, you go to the top of the queue and we help you deal with it. We can help you plan how you're going to deal with it. The tabletop exercise logic enables you to deal with those right now. So, questions. Brings me to the end of what I was planning to say. As I said at the beginning, if you do have questions, please do type them into the question pane on the on your GoToWebinar dashboard, and what I'll do is I'll share the questions and share the share the answers. So, cyber criminals are aware of the SEC reporting requirements and will whistleblow. Is there a mitigation for this? Sadly, the only mitigation is make sure you meet your reporting obligations. There isn't another mitigation. Having a properly tested incident response plan, allow for the fact that if you don't in your planning, allow for the likelihood that the cyber criminals will report you to the SEC. So plan how you're going to deal with the incident, plan how you're going to respond, determine what material looks like, have a process where you go, we don't think this is material, but a cyber criminal might, so we can report it anyway. Those are kind of logical options, but the key mitigation is assume that cyber criminals will attack you and will be expecting to report to the SEC that you haven't reported. So your processes need to be slick, solid, and that's when, you know, building it into the whole organization, making sure that all users understand that hiding cyber incidents is a dismissal offense. Reporting cyber incidents is a requirement. They have to do that. People make mistakes, they're allowed to, but reporting it immediately, getting it into the system, getting it into the incident management process, being able to deal with it, assess it, close it down, that's the critical thing, speed of response. You've got to think of cyber incidents a bit like a stroke or a heart attack. You've got to deal with them fast. And, you know, the top first responders, they train on how to deal with those kind of things so they can deal quickly. That same first responder approach has to apply to cyber incidents. What size of companies does this apply to? I'm not sure what the question is. So SEC regs apply to all registrants. The CyberComply incident response tool can be accessed by any organization of any size. The Fast Track 500 is for organizations between 20 and 500 employees. There's a Fast Track available for organizations below 20 employees. Give us a shout. We can talk to you about that. Who needs to be compliant with SEC cybersecurity requirements? And the answer is if you are a registrant, if you are classed as a registrant for a foreign private issuer. So basically, if you're listed on any one of the 3 US stock exchanges, or you are a company involved in making the market, you have to comply. That's it. Very straightforward. No way out of that. Are there any options in the scope of applicable requirements based on application specific? Nope. You simply have to comply if you're a registrant or a foreign registrant. Government entities won't be listed on stock exchanges, so the SEC regs don't apply to government entities. They apply to privately owned, privately held, stock exchange listed entities. If you're a government entity, you've got a whole host of other regulations that apply to you, emanating from CISA, from a number of different agencies. So you know, you simply have different requirements. But private listed entities listed on the US stock exchange, you have to comply. That's all there is to that. So any other questions, folks? You are welcome to ask any other questions that you may have around how do you comply, or what do you have to do to comply. So ask questions. If you do have any, do type them into the question box on your GoToWebinar panel. In the absence of any other questions, it kind of feels like we're done. So if any of these solutions can help you with your compliance journey, help you stay out of trouble, please do give us a call. Our follow-up team will send you a questionnaire. There's a bunch of ways you can get hold of us. And we will also be sending out, obviously, the slides, as I said we would. So please do come back to us. Very happy to help you deal with the inevitable incidents and do so in a way that enables you to report them if you have to, but also enable you to continue or to continue meeting your annual reporting compliance requirements around your cybersecurity management system and your management competence to deal with it. Need to learn where to email my questions, please. Yes, we will email the slides. When we email the slides out to us, we'll provide some information so you can email questions in there as well. Very happy to follow up. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're done for today. I hope that you all have a successful afternoon and that it's not too cold in your part of your state today. Bye-bye.